All right, hello and welcome again to another episode of No Prize Podcast. I'm your host, the Professor Bud Young, and with me, as always, is Lucas. Whoa, what's up, Lucas? But
Man,
your trades in GameStop went through.
oh, let's not even get started on that, man. No, that's a whole ugly situation. You tell me, oh man, you're poor because you don't trade, and then when we do trade, um, you freaking pull the plug on me, and you tell me you can only have one stock. What? I'm sorry. Excuse me. I just wanted to use my stimulus check to go ahead and make some proper financial. Oh,
Yeah,
gee.
I don't know. I educated myself a whole lot on that this week because I work in the financial industry. I'm a financial advisor, so which I don't talk about on this podcast. I'm legally obligated not to. Um, but it was nuts because I'm on the other end, so I see the danger that it holds for everything. Like the last couple of years, the market's built on a house of cards. So it's what happens is all the investors are like pulling those bottom cards out, and where there are going to be a few people that probably make a killing on it. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be hurting, and probably the people that are going to be hurting are not the people that everybody that's buying all that stock wants to be hurting. It's going to be
Mm.
everybody. But anyway, I I digress. So hey, it's we're going to talk some Marvel comics. We got that big huge King in Black event going on through the books. We have the next two episodes of WandaVision to talk about, episode 3 and 4, and yeah, we're going to talk some maybe talk some comics that don't involve King in Black. Though good luck finding those this week. Um, but yeah, let's jump into do the let's do the non King in Black comic book this week. We'll do Strange Academy.
Ooh.
Yeah, we like Strange Academy. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
well, I mean, that's one of those comic books that it's going down the line. A lot of the people, it's one of those either you like it or you hate it. A lot of people are wary of it because there have been so many academies all over the place. DC's had one, Marvel's had quite a few,
yeah.
going back and forth. But then afterwards, nothing really comes out of it. The only academy that's been successful is which one? The X Men Academy, right?
hmm
And even that one's no longer in existence. That one's burnt down to the ground somewhere in the middle of a field in Idaho. So,
So that's what steered me away from this book initially, right? Because Strange Academy seemed so much like X-Men for First Class or whatever, or Avengers Initiative or something like that. They've done this to death. The hey, let's establish a school to teach other younger people how to be heroes, and then comedy slash tragedy ensues, and you get to figure out what this is. The one thing that that has been growing on me, and I'm going to shout out the creators on this: Scotty Young, writer with Humberto Ramos art with Edgar Delgado on colors, with VC's Clayton Cowles as letterer. um, and let's see. Oh, Nick Lowe is the editor. So if you don't like it, you can blame him. Um, so this the last issue actually ended on a cliffhanger where one of the young students, Doyle Dormammu, was killed, and now here's the fallout from this and the repercussions. This book does not really showcase any of the students other than Emily and Doyle. But I want to say something about the cast before I start talking about the book. The one thing that kind of has turned me on to this book is that the cast is all new. There's not there's not a whole lot of characters even in this book that have existed outside of this book. So I mean, you have Doctor Strange, of course, and you have Brother Voodoo, who's one of the teachers, and then so all of the professors in the school are all the mystics of the Marvel universe, like Scarlet Witch, who we'll talk about later. But the stars of this book are the kids, and this book really kind of showcases Emily, who's one of the students. And I honestly really can't tell you that I know really much about her. I just don't know if any of these characters have been really fleshed out yet. But Doyle Dormammu is actually the offspring. I don't know if we can call him the son, but he might as well be, right?
Right.
Um, of Dormammu, and he's the one that was killed in this episode. And then Emily, who was doing very poorly, Doctor Strange has to call on his mystic abilities slash surgical abilities to save her life. So that's the gist of this issue is that Doctor Strange goes through the great lengths, makes a cosmic pact with Hoggoth, who is one of the magical forces that Doctor Strange calls upon to use his powers to save her, and
Yeah.
that's I thought that was cool. And then at the end of the issue is where Emily is saved, and she's upset now that they can't save Doyle, and we find out at the end of the issue that and I want to say I don't really quite know what happens here, but it seems like her love for Doyle brings him back to life, and everybody's shocked. So, um, so I want to shout out Humberto Ramos first of all on the artwork in this book. I've seen Humberto Ramos, and he's been one of the bigger artists at Marvel for years now on Amazing Spider-Man and Champions, and I've seen him grow as an artist since he started, and I think this has been kind of his strongest efforts as far as even background or his work with just kind of the super psychedelic stuff that Doctor Strange kind of demands of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As an artist, and then especially the last couple of pages, the just the facial expressions on Emily and the rest of the cast as Doyle is brought in, it was like kind of very emotional. Which previously where I had read Strange Academy and it was kind of like a quick read and a kind of like I don't really know these characters, I'm not invested in them. This is the first issue of Strange Academy that I was like, okay, maybe I'm starting to care about these characters a little bit. So I really think that if they're going for the slow burn here, and again, we're going to talk about slow burns later. I think that this issue, this really kind of has gotten me on board with Strange Academy. What do you think about it?
This has been one of those, and you talked about it being a slow burn. This has been one of those that has been set up for a really long time.
Well, because the
A
first issue came out
really
right at the
long time.
beginning of the pandemic, right? And then we didn't get another issue for months.
Right, but some of the elements of this has been set up for such a long time, incredibly long time. So, for instance, the fact that magic has a cost.
Yep.
That's been what since 2018 when they started talking about that. The fact
Yeah.
that they didn't like the fact that Doctor Strange was going here and there, just using magic
Hmm.
willy nilly, and he wasn't paying the cost. That's been set up for like the longest, right? And now you've got, hey, he can't just make things happen. He has to actually go and beg the Vishanti and Hoggoth, like you said, for them to interfere, and then they wanted them to interfere on behalf of on behalf of the child of a dark god, one of their competitors,
Yeah.
right? And then he's just looking at him like, okay, what do you want me to do? What's the cost that you're going to pay, right? And I thought it was also interesting that you had even Doctor Voodoo, who normally he was one of the biggest things or the biggest entities that understands cost. That's what voodoo is all about. That's where it kind of like okay, that's not what Dr. Voodoo should be doing, but voodoo priests they fully understand that, right? Hey, I'm going to do this magic, but it's going to freaking cost me. What are you going to really? But no. But instead, he just freaking jumps into the fire, jumps into some dark dimension, doesn't know where he's going, and then he goes up and fails anyway.
Hmm.
But like you said, the biggest aspect is Emily. You know, she is able to bring back Doyle. I believe that's what his name is, right?
Yep.
Um, and to do that, usually you have to have some type of Omega level freaking power, right? Because she doesn't freaking beg Hoga, she doesn't pull or pay some freaking cost. She just comes out of nowhere. She gives him a little kiss, little pecky peck, little teenage strange academy romance to get us going. Um, and so what issue are we? We're on issue number 7, and now
Yeah.
we're supposed to care about this little teen romance. I was like, okay, um, it's not. So once again, I know people get tired of me talking about manga, right? But manga has all types of romances where it'll take um, 2 to 3 years before they even hold hands. And here we are, we're on issue number 7, and she gives him a kiss goodbye, and then that's the thing that freaking brings him back. So hopefully it was just one of those one-off things, and we don't see any more of that fully open stuff. Draw it out a little bit more, pull back, give me another 2 years to see the hands holding before I see any more stuff, man, because that was enough. But all around for me, for Strange Academy, this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see that tension. I wanted to see the stuff that works in the other parts of that MCU or Marvel Universe working like that. It was a great, and the art. Come on, like who did you say the artist was? Was that Umberto Ramos?
Humberto Ramos. Yeah.
Umberto Ramos. I mean, come on, the Vishanti,
Yeah.
the purple clouds of Hogarth.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, just
Yep.
incredible,
Just
incredible.
yeah, he's really kind of cutting loose on this, and I think that we had kind of complained a little bit, maybe a couple of years ago, on this podcast about his work on Amazing Spider-Man, and how proportionally, I think he was a little off, but here I think there's effort here. He's obviously really enjoying what he's doing here, and he's being super creative, and I really think. In in a Doctor Strange book where so much Doctor Strange is hit or miss, where it's either Doctor Strange is the only hero in Marvel Universe that I'm like you can either be really 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 good stories or really 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 bad stories, and just can't get into it, or it's real you like I can count the amount of great Doctor Strange stories probably on one hand, but I like the crowd he surrounds himself with here. Um, Doctor Strange, I've always kind of thought about as a solo hero, and here
Yeah.
as a mentor and a teacher, it's um, it's fitting because where he is the Sorcerer Supreme, it's his job to kind of pass on his knowledge. So um, yeah, I think this book works. And that's when you said about like holding hands earlier, like how it takes like 3 years in manga. They don't have this kind of time here in the Marvel universe to be waiting 3 years to be holding hands. It's not like this is Silver Age Spider-Man, right, where you can like just let everything take its course. We don't know how long this book is going to last. You might have 12 or 13 issues and then on to the next thing. So they have to make their plot devices count. So, but I think, I think this is good. I think, this book, just like Doyle's head at the end, is a flame on.
Yes, definitely great. Um, I don't want to see it just go out flame out at at issue number 9 or 10. I wanted just to make it up to like
Yeah,
issue number like 60. I wanted to see this more. I want to see like issue number 100, 150 of this bad boy. I want to see this going
it's
on and on and on.
It's interesting because this is one of the books that would like when the pandemic started, I thought that this book was going to just fall by the wayside. We were never going to see it again, and here it is. How is the first issue doing? Is that still in demand? I know there was a demand for the first issue.
Right. The Strange Academy #1, the Opena variant is like around $300.
Wow.
So
All
yeah.
right then. Well, there you go. All right, so that's our non-King in Black book for this week, and the rest of them.
Mhm.
Then there were a ton of them this week, and Lucas is going to catch us up on King in Black. What's going on in King in Black? It seems to me like this is just another um, symbiotes running around possessing heroes, and like I mean, we've seen a bazillion times in Marvel the last few years. I mean, I know we talk like Daredevil ended with him being grafted to a symbiote and having like a symbiote Daredevil mix. But I think all is not as it seems here. I think this is a deeper story.
Yes. So the little panel that I have here, this is in Strange Academy #7, and this is where Emily, in order to save her friend Doyle, she jumps into the dark dimension, the nexus of all realities, hoping to be able to talk to somebody. And this is a very important panel because it connects Strange Academy to everything else that's going on. And I want people to pay attention to that fact. And you see this little panel of checkerboards right here.
Yeah.
That's going to come into play as I explain this. So, Professor, if you're ready, if you want to, you can go ahead. We can get a drink, get some popcorn, sit down because I'm going to have to draw this out. I know people are going to have headaches, but hey, that's why I'm here
All
to draw
right.
this out. All
Learn me
right.
some things, Lucas. Learn me some things.
Let's see. Let me go to slide 27. Uh-oh. Stand by. Pardon me. This doesn't want to seem to. Don't want to seem to. Doggone PowerPoint. PowerPoint doesn't want to participate. Oh, that's why. Because it's not 127. It's number 127. That's why. All right. Here we go. Does that? So here's the question, Professor. Does that
Yes,
little photo in the left hand side, that little oval, does that look familiar to you?
it does. That looks like the symbol that I've seen 100 times in Venom and Carnage over the last few years.
Right. But it turns out it's not. It turns out it's a totally different thing. Right. So this has been I've been able to connect this to almost every King in Black book and some that have not been labeled as King in Black books. Um,
Really?
yeah. And what we're going to go into is called the lineages of the nexus of realities. Right. So I want to give some credit to where I found some of this information. I found this information on the Marvel fandom site. I also found this handy chart out there in the Reddit. Another regions I want to give credit to. His name is like Jedi492 or something like that. He
Wait,
has this.
dude
Yeah,
made a dude made a friggin' chart.
he didn't just make a chart. He made the charts of our charts.
Holy
Um,
crap!
it's got the comet abstracts in there, the cosmic forces, the one above all. It does not have the ones below all, but it's got the cosmic entities, the elder gods, the extra dimensionals, the human gods. It's got a lot of people on there, but it's got the most importantly the people that I need for this presentation. So once again, thank you for those folks that have gone before me and sat up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do this stuff. Um, the first time that we've seen some of this stuff was in Strange Tales #2, and that was back in 1998.
So we're
Now,
talking 20 over 20 plus years ago.
absolutely. Um, and I didn't put that panel in there because it's not as important as where I'm going to start once again, and I'm going to go quick on some of this stuff because once again I've done some of this stuff before. Once again, the chart of where some of this comes in is on the right hand side of the cosmic forces, and very toward the right hand side on the left, that's the void. One of my biggest mistakes when reading some of this stuff is I thought that um, Null was the king of darkness, the god of darkness. Nope, he's just the void. He's king of the void and all that other stuff. And even says it right when he's talking about this. He says at the beginning there was nothing, and then light of being exploited into my realm. But the most important thing that he talks about is war, right? And that war is talking about the first firmament. It was the war between the Celestials and the Aspirants. Um, when that was happening, this is when the Celestials came into his domain, and they just brought light into his and then into his domain, and he didn't know really what to do. And all he knew is that, hey, I'm going to kill something. So he dips his hand into the hand of one of them. He pulls out this living stuff and he chops it down.
Hmm.
Once again, this is him forging the Necro Sword inside the head of one of the Celestials. And what's interesting is I went back and I noticed that there's a whole bunch of symbols inside there that'll come in play later. But he says, "Hey, the first of the race, your kind called Simians, began life as a blade. It pulls its shape from my own, it casts its living edge in the fire of the first creator I felled. There, shrouded in my darkness, the god of a forgotten idea." Once again, and this is in Venom number 4, 2018. Um, I don't. I'm not telling anybody that they need to go ahead and grab this and make sure you get it, sell it for $1 billion. But it is a pretty interesting one because it gives a lot of the good ideas of where they're going forward from this one. And this says, "My weapon forged, I set out to banish the bright and all that came with it." And as you can see, there's all these golden armored soldiers all around them. Now here's a mistake. Another mistake that I made is grammar. Grammar is so important. Commas matter. Periods matter. So I think a mistake that I made was when I read this, I read it as he was just talking about one thing. So for instance, the Necro Sword. Period. That's one thing, and then it should be the God Slayer. Period. So that means he's talking about two different things. And he says, "Together we slit the throats of creation and took the billion stars with the blood of the Almighty."
So that's okay. So that's Null and Gore.
That is no. Gore comes later. So after he was fighting with this one individual, they fell down to the earth, and they were stuck in this position. And then Gore, who is just this lowly creature on this, he just rolls up on them, sees them like this, and then he takes the Necro Sword out of Null's hands, and he goes on to become the God Butcher. Here, now what I'm saying is that in this scenario, in this panel right here, what you have is you have the Necro Sword, period. And then you also had the God Slayer, which or the God Killer, which is actually the armor in this particular scenario. Um, and also you have Ode, who was a soldier from like the lands of Frettenheim, and I'll go into that later as well. So here it is. This is the God Killer. First appearance was in Iron Man number 13. This was, and they talked about it. This was something that was used in the Celestial War, and the some of the aspirants of Celestials left this on Earth to let the other Celestials know not to come to this place because somebody was going to be able to use it. That person that was able to use it was Tony Stark because he was bred that way. They made a deal with his parents to give him these special powers to be able to freaking use this thing. And what's interesting about the story is they actually talk about, hey, there used to be as many celestials as stars, but then something happened that some type of weapon was used on them so that there aren't that many anymore. So that's where this comes from, and that's why I'm positive that this is probably that same armor. It's just a little bit more technologically advanced. The other confirmation where they also talk about that is in the connection between the first firmament and the Celestial War as in Ultimates 2, number 6. If you guys want to check it out and read it, it's a good read. Of course, they're setting up for that whole thing with America Perez, Doc Strange. I forget the other ones. They need to get Blue Marvel in there. There hasn't been any talk about that yet, but there's a pretty good roster that I was reading through. And then let's see. Oh, so once again, there's proof that Null is not the darkness. Because in this panel, it talks about how after his tether was broken with his um, symbiotes, and this was after Thor actually killed one of them. That untethering shot back throughout the universe to where he actually was. The rest of the symbiotes they turned on him to ask him for whatever, and then they just surrounded him and around just gathered around him, and then it says, "Hey, they roared in mutiny, and they rose up, millions of them and more, untethered from my control. My children spawned endlessly. Clintar is their world cage, and consumed by the abyss of my own creation, I drown in their darkness." So if he's the king of darkness, no, you're not. You can control the darkness and just get him away from you, but he cannot control the darkness because guess what? He's not the god of darkness. And this was a pretty interesting one as well. Where Null as an avatar, he's got Eddie in his hands. He says, "Thank you for releasing my other Eddie Brock." Though I'm not sure how much how much you had to do with the choice. Um, this one was once again Venom 4 was a pretty strong book. Now that I'm seeing some of the stuff and looking back at it, now here we go. This is where we really started getting to the meat of where they're going with this. Supernatural thrillers, The Valley of the Worm. Now, Marvel actually a couple of years ago actually republished this as a True Believer book, and they called it the Conan and the Serpent. Yeah, Conan and the Serpent War number 0. Supernatural Thrillers number 3. Right. And in this particular book, that particular guy and the with the blonde hair, his name is Njord, and Njord as an Asgardian, and this is way before Thor. This is possibly before Odin's son, or at the same time Odin's there. It doesn't really go into it. But he's out there. He's doing his thing. He's kind of a scout for the Asgardians. The Asgardians, the rest of the Asgardian parties, they roll up on him and they go forward while he's hanging out with these guys, these little guys. And the little guys are telling him, "Hey, don't let him go. Don't let him go over there. Don't tell him we just came from there. Don't tell him to go there." And he's like, "We're Asgardians. We can do what we don't care. We got this." Well, he decides to go check on him, and all he knows is he sees this trail where he was expecting people to go be. Then he goes a little further, and then the whole village of where they were and was supposed to set up camp is just laid waste, burned up, laid waste, done. And he goes, "Oh my goodness!" So he's going to go even further, go check on him. And then the once again the little dark guy says, "Nope, don't go there because it is death to follow the trail of the dark one." And he's like, "What's going on?" So he says, "Hey, once again, my people, if we've already gone through this, we've tried to do something with it. There's no fighting the dark one." He's like, "All right, whatever." So he finds a cave where the dark one's hiding out at, and he fights it, and he dies. And then that is the end of the story. It's just a big freaking worm that comes out of nowhere, and he freaking dies. Well, the big thing about the worm is that it actually turns out that worm, and it's explained in Conan and the Serpent War in 2019, that serpent was actually an avatar of the god Set, one of the elder gods, um, one of the Earth elder gods. So what's interesting is that on the right hand side in that chart where it kind of breaks down what was going on with some of those gods is Hogarth, right? Hogarth the Hori, which is one of the gods that we just talked about in the Strange Academy, and then it's got all these other gods, include Set, which is that serpent god. Oh, and I do want to point out the fact that the Valley of the Serpent, the Valley of the Worm was adapted by from this chiller story by Robert E. Howard, who was like one of the big science fiction fantasy guys from like the 20s.
Oh,
So
he's
it was
the creator of Conan.
yeah,
Yeah.
him and H.P. Lovecraft, all of their stories are coming up big inside of this whole Kingdom Black. I mean, huge right now. Um, so while everybody else is going on about this comic book, all week I've been looking at the weird tales, trying to see if there's any way I can grab up some of those copies. Uh, there's none. There's nothing out there. You're not gonna be able to grab it. The In Scream Curse of the Carnage, number 2, there was actually this character who, before Null had arrived, her name was the mother. She was trying to get Amy Benson to join her before Null gets there to save her. And that one's a good one to read because it actually goes into the history of her and that worm and the dragon that was there before. And it kind of goes into, it wasn't just a dragon that killed all. I mean, excuse me, it wasn't just a worm that killed all those people. It was the dragon. And when Njord actually died and whatever, it actually talks about Thor and what he did and how what happened after he killed the dragon. Because after he killed the dragon, she rose up and she lays waste to that village. So it wasn't just, hey, the worm did. No, she destroyed it and killed everybody in there. And then this is kind of some of the panels from that. It talks about Set. And this one, once again, is in Conan Serpent War #1. And that kind of places how big it is. Basically that whole area that he was in at the time had a whole bunch of big monsters from the Set God. And then who was Set, Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian #7. That was his first appearance. And then it talks about a whole bunch of those elder gods, the Gaia, Oshter, Chahathan, and Set. They were all elder gods. And the interesting thing about Set is that Set, um, part of his power is that he's actually able to eat some of the other gods and become even more powerful. And I think that process is going to become a huge thing for the King in Black, so that whoever is going to have to go against Null or any of this other stuff, because remember the Olympians are being a pain in the butt as well, is that they're going to have to combine super forces in order to go against the big bads, whatever. Sort of like Voltron or Transformers or Power Rangers. Combine and transform, yay! And then they go and do that. And I actually had people have been laughing to me about this, but there is a natural precedent for this happening. So let's get that. I don't want to talk about the negative zone. So I do want to take a quick second to talk about this stuff. This is Wraith. This is Wraith when he was a little boy. It talks about when he was thrown into the negative zone, and then that's where he first encountered the symbiotes, and that's where his power came from. Right before Null just grabbed him up and freaking ripped him off. Um, Another piece is that another part of his whole mythos is that once he got that and once he grew up, he decided that this signet ring, which had the little skull on it, he was going to find out whoever had that ring on, and he was going to kill him because that was the person that he thinks killed his dad, right? Um, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting piece. The problem is that this insignia shows up everywhere, to include the Valkyries, to include Strange Academy, it's just everywhere. So every time I see this, I'm keeping an eye on it. Now another place where a skull that just kind of shows up is there's this thing called Atom, who is also known as the Demigorge. He was actually the son of Gaia, who um who was had to deal with all these bad guys. They were doing stuff that they weren't supposed to do, so she asked the Demigorge for help. He impregnates her with this guy Atom. Atom has the ability, just like Set, to be able to eat some of the gods. He has the ability to eat some of the gods in order to get rid of them, at least hold them down for a while. So he's born. He knows exactly what he's got to do. He goes out and he's starting to eat some of the gods. Now, an interesting thing is, right before he was getting ready to eat some of the gods, Jehethan, which is one of the big baddies of the elder gods, he was actually inscribing on these dark tablets and crystals and everything. Part of this is what's called the dark hold or whatever. So, because he knew that as long as these dark tablets crystals existed on Earth, doesn't matter whether he died, whether he was sent to another dimension, he would be able to come back. Especially, he would be able to be brought back by anybody that read off of him. So he does that. He finishes his thing, and then the demigorge swallows him, and then Adam go demigorge goes up at the sun, and then it's over, and then we don't really see them again until this part of the Thor annual number 10, in which we have a panel with Hela, Mephisto, and these other gods that rule hell, and they're once again they're reading off the Dark Scrolls and everything, and then guess who they bring back? Well, they bring back Demigorge, who says, "Well, I guess I'm here, so I guess I gotta kill everybody, right?" Um, and that's what happens. You read off the Dark Scrolls, he comes back to make sure everything's right, make sure the balance is good. So he gets there. He's starting to kill everybody. Looks, I mean, I I gotta take a second to say, hey, that art for the Demigorge. And once again, I forget what year this was. I didn't put it in there, but that art for the Demigorge is amazing, man. Love that freaking art. So as those guys were eating and dispensed stuff, Thor decides to get together the band, all the gods of light from all of realities, gets them together. It says, "Hey, freaking, we got to go get the demigorgs, or else we're going to be gone too." So you got mighty Thor, you got Apollo, Indra, Shango, who's one of the African gods of light and lightning, Tawa, the sun champion of the Pueblo, and the beam of gold light. I'm not going to even say the Aztec one, Kahasatol, and Horus, the Egyptian one. He gets these guys together. He's like, all right, we're gonna go get the demigorg and hopefully beat the guy. And they fail miserably. They fail miserably. So he swallows them all, and then he realizes, oh wait, I wasn't supposed to swallow those guys. So he just vomits them up, and then that was the end of that. He says, hey, I'm gonna let you guys go now, but I'm coming back if this happens again. And once again, this was in Thor Annual number 10, the God Eater.
Hmm.
And this is him vomiting the gods back up. It says a succession of staggering blasts follows as though through the universe itself were in convulsion, and the link between the seven nether worlds is severed, restoring them to their original dimensional boundaries. The Nexus,
Hmm.
I'll say it again, the Nexus is more the is no more, and the cosmic axis ceases to tremble. So this guy kind of has a control over who is in and out of the different nexuses and everything. So that whole storyline is finished. Now, what do we got going on right now? Right now, and Namor number two, actually, we're on number 3 or 4 right now. Um, we got the storyline where Namor is remembering something that happened when he was a young fish mermaid or whatever you want to call him. Where his tribe was teaming up with another mermaid tribe, and they were looking for this crystal or this tablet or whatever you want to call it, because this was controlling um, this group called the Deep Tide and making them kill everybody. Now the bad thing was is that every time they encountered a new village, the village thought that they were controlling this monster to do the bidding for them, when that's not the case. The case was is that this monster, this elder god, this is possibly Chaluthu or Chahathon was pushing their buttons to make them do whatever it needed to so it could come back. So it's actually called the, it's well there's two parts. So there's the tablet of life and there's the tablet of death. But in Mermaid Land, in Namor Land, it was called the Forgotten Stone. And right now, that's what that whole quest is about. It's about looking for this Forgotten Stone so they could possibly read off of it and stop this whole deal.
Thank you for clearing that up for me because I was reading the Namor King in Black and I was like, what does this have to do with anything in King in Black? I had no idea. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Um, and it says, and this one panel is pretty interesting because it does say, hey, but dark forces have a will of their own, and no matter the House of Curly tries to bind and atone them, such as the Unforgotten Stone, a solid manifestation of their evil power, perhaps even their twisted, unearthly souls. Um, Now, it's not necessarily drawing from the Dark Force, but the Dark Force is a totally other different thing. But yes, it is pulling from this whole deal. Let's see. And then that's why we have the Black Tide right now because they are under the power and the control of this unforgotten stone, this tablet of death. Um, the next time that or actually one of the last times that we saw the Nexus of Realities, um, there was this whole thing in Man Thing #2, 1997. I do suggest people read that whole Man Thing run, because it's got a lot of interesting stuff about what's going on right now and how it kind of works. The problem is it's all poetry. A lot of it is just poetry. Hey, I barely passed freaking high school freaking English, man. I can't be going to the this and the does and therefore out thou. No, I'm not. No, man. So it says one of the panels says, "Hey, that has already just a crack caused, I suspect, by the return of those heroes of legend to our reality. A crack that widens with alarming speed that has already destroyed the nexus of realities." And then he goes to what the swamp where the man thing was born is what some mystics would call the Am point, the place all universes, all dimensions, and parallel worlds emerge from and return to when creation sleep. So that explains why Man Thing is so important. Well, actually, there's more to it, but Man Thing and that swamp is so important to what's going on right now. They just haven't really pulled it in yet.
Hmm. Well, in Man Thing back in the early '70s, they really leaned into the nexus of all realities with Steve Gerber created Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck came out of the nexus of
Yes.
all realities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Actually, in that particular series, Howard the Duck does make an appearance, um, just for a little bit as a kind of a callback to that. And one of Man Thing's first, I think maybe like volume one, I forget, actually, maybe it's Strange Chillers, I believe, or something like that. And I forget the name of the lady. When she was in college, she wanted to impress her grandfather, so she steals one of his books that was like part of the Darkhold. She goes out to the swamp of all places at
mhm.
midnight during a freaking lunar and freaking eclipse and reads from it, and just this little thing freaking just comes out of it, and she's like, "Oh, it didn't work." She walks away, and then this little thing, which is a dragonfly, just grows, and then follows her, and then tries to kill her later.
Is
Um,
that was in Man Thing?
it was part of it was part of a Man Thing story, but I forget
Yeah.
the title. The title, I think it was like Strange Chillers or something like that.
So I think that might have been Jennifer Kale who ended up going
Yes.
to the Nexus of Realities, learned from Dakim the Enchanter, and wow, if they're bringing all these old characters, like, and you have to pay attention now for like from comic books in 1973, that's really something.
Oh,
So I want to commend you on the work that you've done to kind of put this all together. So
oh, it's getting it. Oh, wait on it. And I don't want to because I mean I don't want to take too much time because it's Saturday morning. But hey, so once again, and this is the Fragment of Life. This one was pretty interesting. Once again, that's in that Man Thing series from 1997. Alan Brandt and Man Thing, they go to part of the dimension, and it gets really trippy Do not get high before reading that book because you'll trip out. I'm telling you, don't do it. But once again, it's all about the symbols. It's all about all this other stuff. Once again, you can see some of those symbols that we've been seeing for Null and Carnage in there. You see that. Um, Ellen Brandt, she was Man Thing's wife prior to. She played a big part of this freaking book. The Tablet of Life that didn't just freaking come out of nowhere. And once again, Amazing Spider-Man number whatever it was this week talks
Wow.
about one of the guys from Mr. Negative comes out. He say, "Hey, you need more than the book, the Tablet of Life. This is the Tablet of Life." It was Amazing Spider-Man number 68 from 1969. Once
Yeah,
again,
that was a huge storyline back then with Silvermane and yeah.
yeah. So once again, they're not pulling this stuff out of their butt. They
Wow.
actually went back. You know, I was actually talking to some of the drunken chat guys. They're like, "Do you really think that so and so was like, yeah, yeah, look, 1969, they went all the way back to pull some of this stuff that they're talking about."
Wow.
Um, this was an interesting panel. There's all types of symbols and logos and everything, and the tablet of life and all the other stuff. There's actually a cloak that goes along with it. Um, And the most important thing that goes back with the Namor comment that we were just talking about is that it says, because Namor is talking to Man Thing subconsciously or psychically or whatever, and Man Thing explains to him and say, "Hey, man," um, and that conscious embrace him and says the prince telling him in wordless words about the shattered nexus of all reality is telling him too that one of the fragments of the nexus now rested in the deeps of the ocean in the place forbidden to man, the Forgotten Stone. That is the Forgotten
Wow.
Stone they're talking about. 1997 is when they put that out there. Um, uh, One piece of the puzzle that we need to keep an eye out for, and you can see that this lady is covered, absolutely covered in these symbols. Her name is Cleto. She's the Holy Mother. She apparently was there when Atlantis fell into the ocean. She has like all the mysteries of all the knowledge of what's going on. Um, she tells Namor, "Hey, come forward, Namor, and accept the coveted stone that only the child of Earth see may receive. But with it, I give the understanding that worship of an object, a mere thing, means nothing in the eyes of the true Atlantis. Knowing that Atlantis, the Nexus fragment, Kaito, even great Poseidon himself, are but dreams. The reality which they represent exists within you." So this is happening to him in a dream, which is the Holy Mother, where she's showing him what happened. She's trying to tell him, "Hey, the fragment is there. I'm going to show you what this looks like." And then he's like, "Okay, yeah." And then as soon as he wakes up, he forgets it all. He doesn't.
Hmm.
This whole thing was freaking pointless and useless. Another thing that's out there right now is the Book of Life. Once again, the first appearance was in Street Tales number 2. And it says, "Hey, but all things die, and so in those dreams of time died the universe. The creator grew tired of his creation and called it back into herself. All things and beings collapsed in shards and shadows and plunged into the sea of nothing from which everything sprang." So once again, talking about the deep ocean and what was going on there. I'm going to give you a quick second to take a look at all those. This is the lineage of the nexus of realities. So that whole logo or symbol, whatever you want to call it, that's on Carnage's head. It's not just this weird symbol. This is a symbol for the lineage of people that have been promised or that their grandfathers or whatever swore to protect the nexus of realities. It shows here just 5, but I'm pretty sure there's probably more out there. But one of these symbols is for Cadmon, the first man of the lineage, and part of the lineage was actually Man Thing. So Man Thing was actually related to Cadmon somehow. The problem is that Man Thing was actually when he was a kid or a youngster, he was actually given the choice. Hey, this is what you're supposed to do. This is your destiny. Do you accept your destiny or not? And he said no. He said no. So to get back at him, what they made is they set him on a course that would make him turn into Man Thing, so that he would have to sort of fulfill somewhat that destiny as being the guardian of the nexus of realities. Because it says it was Catman's duty to maintain the dream. Without him, everything would dissolve, dissipate into mist and shadow, dream stuff and fading memory. Let all others follow Cleito, embracing and executing in God's majestic illusion. For this is was her will. Only the man of the lineage would bear the burden of the truth. So once again, I said, hey, there's a whole bunch of poetry in there, right? But when I get to the end of it, I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Gotcha. Going back to this stuff real quick. This is where it starts to really tie in. Going back to this little particular thing. So I've talked about this before. Is that I really think that the guy that's inside this armor, this God Killer armor, is actually old. We never really got an explanation of where old was. All we know is that his body currently resides in parts of Asgard, and he was stabbed with something, possibly the Necro Sword, where the symbiotes got inside him, or maybe he put it inside himself. But the only thing that could stop him was a piece of the whitewood from Fanaheim. And here's where we start getting into the Conan stuff, right? Once again, I'm going to connect the Conan stuff to the Asgardian stuff. Once again, all praise to Robert Howard and H.P. Lovecraft. They together some interesting stuff. So this is the Thurian continent at the time of King Cole. This is before the the post cataclysmic era of Atlantis. On the left hand side, you can see Atlantis. It's still above water. There's nothing wrong with it. And then way over to the right, you can see the Lemurian Isles. That's up in the top right corner to the east. The Lemurian Isles, there's a big piece of the Conan lore. It's like huge. It's actually not that huge, but it you get some of the maps you can actually see it, which I thought was interesting. And some of the current residents of Atlantis and other areas are from Lemur. And I forget what else is from Lemur. Like some, oh yeah, if you go and look at some of the definitions of the tablets, they say that that stuff is from Lemur. So there's some definitely interesting stuff. So once again, I was talking about Farnheim, right? That the white wood comes from Farnheim, right? The problem is that if you look at this map of Asgard, there is no Farnheim, right? You've got Hell up to the north. You got Niflheim. You've got Valhalla. Everybody knows what Valhalla is. Right in the middle, right before you get to the Bifrost, that's where you got Asgard. To the south of that, you've got the ruins of Vanaheim. That's part of that area that I was talking about earlier, where Set and the mother probably laid waste to that whole thing. Um, and then over to the right, if you go north and to the right, then you have Verenheim. Well, that's kind of interesting because that means that there is no Farnheim. Once again, Farnheim is where the Whitewood came from. Well, what happened? So it turns out that there was actually a war in between the Asgardians and I forget the name of Fraser's the Veneer, between the Asgardians and the Veneer. Um, at some point, the Veneer left because they got tired of freaking defending that area and they went into the woods, right? So while they were in the woods, the Veneer, they do a lot of magic, and that's probably how she probably did something with the white wood, and then that white wood they kept onto it, and they later used that to kill Ode and protect themselves from Null, right? But still, where is Farnheim? Well, if you go look at this map, you got Vanaheim and you got Varenheim. What probably happened is that while they were fighting the war down here in Vanaheim, they left. They went up to here to Varenheim to get away from that, and this is probably the woods over here because they went through the Norn forest and the Enchanted forest and all that other stuff. So this was probably part of Fernheim. And while she was there, they called that Farnaheim at the time, and that's where the wood that makes up the white wood came from. Real quick, once again, the next big mystery is who's the god of light. We don't know. All we know is that when Strange Tales, Werewolf Story, Man Thing, and this is a continuation of that whole Man Thing story. Um, Ellen Brandt, who is Man Thing's ex-wife, and Silver Surfer and Man Thing, they go off to this weird dimension in the next of all realities, and they encounter these light beings who are trying to point them towards the nexus of realities and everything. But they point them towards the Crystal City. I'm not going to go into that because there's a whole big thing, but you do need to know that the Crystal City is basically where the Phoenix live, the Shi'ar gods live. Peter Quill, Peter Quill just came out of the Crystal City, right? When remember when he was in that little world, that's
Right.
Crystal,
Yeah.
that's where he was. That's where they are right now. That's in this particular panel. That's where they are right now. Another thing that people don't realize is that Man Thing actually had a kid. Um, and this is before he actually turned into the Man Thing. He had a kid with Ellen Brandt. He never really met the kid, but she was pregnant with the kid. She didn't want to raise him, so she gave him away. And the thing with the part about the whole lineage of realities is somebody that's a part of your lineage, even if you don't do it, somebody has to do it. So this creature named Terminus came to the kid, grabbed him up, and has been teaching him the way of this whole nexus of realities so he could take it over. And remember, I pointed the checkerboard out to you in the Strange Academy.
Yeah.
There it is, back there.
Oh
This
yeah.
is a peep. Yep, right back there. That's a part of the whole nexus of realities. This is where it kind of explains what happened um, when he decided not to do fulfill his destiny. And once again, this is Strange Tales Werewolf. Strange Tales Werewolf Man Thing number one. And this is where we're gonna drop us off at. Um, this this is where kind of the most interesting thing because as I was going through and I was mapping out what was going on, it looks like a lot of this stuff was already there because it talks this whole thing about the 616 universe, what happens at certain times, every 5,000 years, it's a cycle and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's been an interesting thing to see what's been going on with all these connections. Um, but let's see, I'm gonna go forward. The biggest layout for the Nexus of all realities was Quasar number 50. You could see all these guys here, all these different characters, to include Ren and Stimpy, one of my favorites of all time. They're one of the ladies that was in that original thing with the circle of the people from hell. She's in this, right? Um, you can see somebody that's a mermaid from Namor's place. She's in there. And what's actually interesting is up at the top right, excuse me, at the top, you see that little mini figured mini eye thing?
Yeah.
That is called Null the Darkness.
Hmm.
Not with an N, not with a KN, but with an N. So NUL, Null the Darkness. I forget what his first appearance is, but that I thought that was interesting as well. And this, I forget, this is an old comic, so it's not recent, but this was an old one. And then the very last slide I'm going to talk to you, and this is a way shot dark, crazy conspiracy theory. Avengers number 17. I thought this was a weird pairing of Boy Thing and Blade. I was like, man, that was weird back then, but I was like, hey, go crazy, Marvel, go crazy. Well, once again, if Boy Thing or excuse me, Man Thing is supposed to be the guardian of his reality, there's actually a precedent for Blade having been asked to be that as well, but for the dark guys, for the dark side guys. So combining these two guys in this situation is not only weird, it's like that has me thinking. And that's all I got for that for that particular piece. Um, just keep an eye out for those signs, ladies and gents.
Wow.
That's all I can ask for.
Wow. All right. So, wow. So this episode's going to run long now. All right. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk WandaVision. I love Crisis in the Toyverse. That ad is so epic. All right. WandaVision. Now let's recap, because on our last podcast we had watched the first two episodes, and I think both of us kind of thought it was not everything that we had hoped, and I think we both suffered from our enjoyment because we were watching with our wives, and we had to stop and explain stuff as we went, and at the end it was kind of like, no, hang in there, babe, it's gonna get better. you know and so we have the next two episodes. We have episode 3 and 4. Now, episode 3 was more like episode 1 and 2, where it's still very sitcom-y. They're still kind of giving you little bits of clues of what the hell is going on, and not really explaining too much. But episode 3, um, really kind of started going out there, right? So we first, at the end of episode 2, now we're in color, and now we seem to jump another decade into the 70s, where the set turns into something out of the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
and then you're getting kind of more. Even the comedy, the writing was more 70s ish.
Yeah.
If I can say
Yeah, a little
that.
bit more adult, a little bit more grown up, a little bit more adult situation.
Yep.
You know,
And
I mean, because during the 50s and 60s, it was very rare for a lady to be shown pregnant up until Lucy.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and the plot, where you would kind of like, you're like, okay, well, everything's not right here in Westview, and we don't really know what's going on, but let's go for the ride. And my wife was watching it, and she was like, man, this next episode better be better to tell us something, or I'm kind of not really into it. And the key in this episode is, she had made herself pregnant at the end of episode 2, and now she's in this rapid pregnancy. And those of us that read comics, we know that this is Billy and Tommy, you know, and that
Right.
she created them out of thin air, and now we have 2 kids. And I think that the way they introduced them was very cool. They pretty much, that was the backdrop of the whole episode, was her rapid pregnancy, Vision using super speed, which I didn't even really know that was a thing. But he runs and gets the doctor, brings him back. But in the meantime, we have Geraldine acting much like the midwife in this episode, and it seems everything is going well, but still there's those little things in there where you have Herb next door cutting into the
The wall, yeah.
cement, and kind of like, almost like he got stuck in a loop, right? He's just like
Yeah.
sitting there, and he just kind of keeps going. And then with Agnes, with Herb and Agnes having that little sidebar where Vision gets a little confused about what they're talking about. So all's not right in, and then you have the conversation after the birth of the kids with Geraldine and Wanda, where she says, "I'm a twin," and then you're like, "Oh snap!" Because now this is where she's going to realize, that something's going on. So then she says, she starts talking about Pietro, and then Geraldine says he was killed by Ultron, and that was when it was like you take the scratch on the record,
Yep.
and you're like, "Oh crap!" And then that's when she snaps. Who are you? Uh, and all that. And then we don't know what happened to Geraldine now until the end of the episode, and she gets rocketed out of Westview. And that was, I think, a red herring almost at the end of that episode, because I was like, oh, Wanda is part of this big experiment across this town when they put the dome over it, and and Sword is actually the sinister force here, and they're controlling and doing some kind of experiment.
Mm.
That's not the case, because that's how episode 3 ends. But episode 4 is when it all comes together, man. Episode 4, if you were not on board with WandaVision until this point, now you have to buy in. If you're not on board by the end of this episode, I don't know what's wrong with you, because this is where we're back into the Marvel MCU. It's not a sitcom anymore. This
Yeah.
is they explain everything up until this point. Plus, we get to see characters we haven't seen in a while. They bring back Kat Dennings as Darcy, and she's from Thor, and then they
Mm.
bring back Agent Wu, who had
Yeah.
previously appeared in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And these Agent Wu has a huge backstory in the actual Marvel comics. Darcy's a new character, but she's been around in the MCU since the first Thor movie. And then we also find out who Geraldine really is. See, now this is one of the problems I have personally with knowing who gets cast as who. So
Mhm.
we knew that Geraldine was actually Monica Rambeau. Okay. But Monica Rambeau, for the people that don't know, in the Marvel universe, was the second Captain Marvel. And she was also an Avenger back in the 1980s, before Carol Danvers took on the mantle of Captain Marvel.
Right.
So she was Captain Marvel, and then she became Photon later. And she had another code name in there in the middle of it, but I think she's Photon now. And anyway, this episode is huge because it begins post snap, right? Like right when everybody comes back. And I thought the special effects right there at the beginning, where she kind of coalesces and becomes Monica,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I was so invested in the first 3 episodes of WandaVision. When I first saw that, it confused the heck out of me. I was like, wait, what's going on here? And then I went, oh, they're all coming back from the snap. So then I was like, buckle your seatbelts, because this is going to be a great episode. And they actually show the chaos of people coming back, which they didn't show in Endgame,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And it's in this episode, you don't get a lot of Vision, you don't get a lot of Wanda, you get a lot of Sword, and
Mm.
they explain Sword to you, and they bring everything into the Marvel universe, and they go through and they explain any of the little things that you saw in episodes 1, 2, and 3, like the radio, the color helicopter, the man in the bee suit.
Yeah.
uh, they explain, they go right through, and then they show these people that are in Westview are actually held captive, and all these people that are playing parts in the show are actually people outside of Westview that they're just mind wiped, right? So they're
Yep.
mind wiped, and they're basically marionette puppets going through the sitcom. The interesting part, so, and this is what I'm going to say, I think the interesting part was who they didn't find out who plays who, right? Because they did
Hmm.
a whole thing and they were like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Hart are played by these two people. Norm is played by this person. Herb is played by this person. You know who they didn't find out? We don't know who plays Agnes,
Hmm.
which Agnes, if you put that together, think Agatha Harkness, right?
Yes.
Agnes, Agatha Harkness. It makes total sense, right? So we don't. So she's gonna have a bigger part to play there,
Absolutely.
and then Dottie, the blonde from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the one that cut her hand on the glass.
Yeah.
They never.
Uh-huh.
We don't know who she is. I haven't figured out who Dottie is yet. So we're gonna go into I'm gonna speculate until they tell us who it is, but I loved the fourth episode, and I was watching it with my wife last night, and I'm just like looking at her, going, "You're on board now, right? You get explained everything. You're good. You're all up to speed." And I had to pause it. I think I had to pause it like 5 times every time they showed a new character. Like when they showed Darcy, I had to hit pause, and I'm like, "Okay, do you remember her? No. Okay, she was in Thor. She was Natalie Portman. She was Jane Foster's sidekick. Okay, I
Yeah.
remember her now. Okay, boom." And then they showed Wu, but then of course with Wu, you had to give all the backstory of, FBI agent in charge of Agents of Atlas. You had to bring them in, and he has a huge backstory in the comics. Not a
There
huge
you go.
backstory yet, right?
Right. So I mean that is a great you can point, man, is that yeah, you got all these great characters that they're bringing into this sort of thing. They just needed a little bit more of a treatsy so that those people who haven't been necessarily watching or paying
Hmm.
attention, that they get the, oh, I know exactly who that is, or at least I know where to go back and find that information.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's a great freaking point. Yep.
And man, how they just go between letterbox format and widescreen, and how they play with the camera angles, and how they play with the costuming, and it's just it's interesting, but it just keeps me on the edge of my seat as far as that. But you find out at the end of the episode, and if anybody couldn't see this coming, right? We all saw it coming. Wanda is creating everything.
Right.
Wanda created Westview from thin. Or if she didn't create Westview, she took over Westview, took over all the people in the town, making them dance for her. She's mind wiped people outside of the town so that they don't know about Westview, or they don't think it exists anymore. And she's just she's controlling everything. What she says to Vision at the end, I have everything under control,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
She's
Exactly.
everything, and I love Agent Wu is us, right? When you're watching that show, Agent Wu is us with the chalkboard and writing down everything, like all the questions. Why is sitcom? Is Vision alive? you know, if you're watching that, it's like every single question everybody would have about the show, he has asked. And and that's the one question is, is Vision alive? The answer is no. He's a total fiction. He's a total creation of Wanda's mind, just like Tommy and Billy. And this is barreling towards disaster
Exactly.
by the
I
end.
I'm
I don't see.
so I'm so invested in what's going to happen with Vision right now because yeah,
Yeah,
I understand he's dead, but there's other parts of his persona that I'm like Vision, right?
yeah.
She's one of my favorite characters. So I want to see if there's a possible way to bring her into this thing. I Vision, there's all types of ethical stuff, but that could be fulfilled with Machine Man, Jocasta, and everything. But I need Vision, so I'm fully invested in seeing what's going on with this. Absolutely.
I'm so there are other aspects that I want to see them bring in. You know, it's just like I don't I want to see if they're going to do anything with Grim Reaper. I know that they kind of hinted at him in one of the Easter egg thingies there, but if you're bringing in Eric Williams for Grim Reaper, you kind of have to bring in Simon, who is Wonder Man, and he has huge implications with Vision because Vision's brain patterns are mapped on Simon Williams's brain patterns. The now the question here is: we know Vision is dead right now, but is that how they bring him back to life? Do they introduce Simon and then use Simon's brain patterns to kind of maybe restore Vision to life?
Mm.
That's that is where kind of I think they might be going with this if they introduce him. There's still going to be some huge things with Agatha Harkness
Right.
because she might end up being I don't know if she's an enabler right now and helping Wanda control everything, because if you go back for like Wanda's powers in the MCU to now, she's never displayed this great of a range of powers before. She's been able to manipulate probabilities, but she's never been able to freaking manipulate reality like she's doing now. So this could be Agatha helping her or Agatha showing her, but we know at some point that Wanda has just broken with reality over the course of 5 years, right? Because
Yeah.
she's she was part of the end game, right? She was there with the rest of the team.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it was very short order uh, that all this happened. But see, the thing is I think she was just kind of in crowd shots after, right? She never because she
She
was
was.
part of
I
the
mean,
snap. She was snapped, right? And then when she came back, she was just part of the group
wait, was she snapped?
fight. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So everybody that wasn't an original Avenger got snapped. So she got snapped, and then she came back, and she was part of the big fight at the end. But they didn't really get into it, right? So she broke with reality post snap. So when she
Right.
came back, she was broken already, right?
Right.
So as
So.
there's so much going on here, and I'm so glad that they got everybody up to speed. And it has been a slow burn, and I've really loved what they've done. When you go back and look at it now, and you look at the, episode 1 is the 50s sitcom, 60s sitcom, 80s, 70s sitcom. The next episode, I mean, we've seen previews. There's going to be some kind of 80s episode where it's Halloween and they're dressed up in their original Avengers costumes, Scarlet Witch and Vision. And I'm sure they're taking Billy and Tommy trick or treating, and it's a Halloween episode. So I'm sure that's you have to bring Agatha Harkness into that episode, right? As the witch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so I
So.
mean, that's going to be the next episode, and then because that episode looks kind of like almost et-ish a little bit,
Mm, we'll
uh,
see.
you know
We'll see.
so it's
Well, I,
interesting.
I do want to drop in on one of the points that you were bringing up regarding the
Sure.
60s, the 70s, and 80s, is that one of my worries has been, okay, Baby Yoda. Who is the Baby Yoda? They don't really have a Baby Yoda right now. But another way to catch on to people's or grab people's heartstrings is you get that retro feeling that show understands you by showing stuff from your childhood, right?
Hmm.
So now you've had grabbed the 60s, so you got people from the 60s, you got grandma and grandpa, you got stuff from the 70s, you've got me, and that's a way to bridge the generational gaps between everybody and say, hey, we're talking to you now. You get from there, and now you're here, and it's a way for everybody to freaking get together on that level. So I think that's a genius way to do all of this stuff that's so meta right now. That it's fascinating the way to do it, and I hope it works out for them.
I think that their idea was, this has just been like a love letter to television, with the acceptance of this episode that just aired, the episode 4. um, it, this was like a throwback. Like they consulted Dick Van Dyke on the first episode for the 50s sitcoms, and
Mm,
then when they did the 60s sitcom, that was more of a Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie kind of episode, which was, I thought, fantastic because it felt like that. It just felt like that. The comedy at the time, the writing was a little different, and with the exception of those little Easter eggs or those little clues they were throwing at you, the episode played just like I used to watch on in the morning before I went to school. And then of course the last episode, which was I call it the Brady Bunch episode because the set looked just like the Brady Bunch, and even the credits that rolled at the end looked like the Brady Bunch too. And I thought, it was just fantastically done. And when they start giving out Emmys or whatever, this is real. This show is going to win for uh, costuming, special effects,
better. It better.
yeah, cinematography. It's gonna win. So I'm really I'm on board. And if this is, I know a lot of it is because we've gone a year and a half without seeing anything from Marvel. Um, but if this was worth the wait. It was worth the wait. And this is, if this springs into Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then other series that are coming out, they're all going to feel different. I know Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be more of like your typical spy film or whatever, but this one is so different in tone and so creative, that I don't think we were expecting something like this, and I think it's turned out fantastically.
Yeah.
So
We were talking about Agnes earlier. So once they start revealing more about Agnes, um, what's in play is Fantastic Four, right? Because that was her
yeah,
first appearance.
that's
Um,
and I think. Uh, Sorry, finish what you're saying, and then I'll jump.
no, I mean that was about it. I mean that's the big thing. Fantastic Four, Franklin Richard.
Yeah,
I forget the name of the another uh, Kang, right? Another Kang. He's shoot, this would be a good time if we can kind of start sprinkling stuff about him in there. So there's all types of possibilities that I can see with this. That
so I think I've said several times when we talk about the MCU that this show, which we know already, is leading directly into the Doctor Strange movie, Multiverse of Madness, where they are going to just break open the alternate realities. And like, yeah, from we could tell that this is Wanda's going to play a huge part in being able to do that. She's already manipulating reality here. So
right.
we know she's going to be able to, probably with Doctor Strange, who can open portals, probably open portals into other realms. Let's bring in the Fantastic Four. Let's bring in the X-Men. Let's bring in Deadpool, because we already know they're making another Deadpool movie. Um, so we know that
Yeah, I
that's
mean
what's going to happen.
you've already got Sword, so Sword is part of the whole X-Men universe. So they're starting to precipitate it in there just a
Yeah.
little bit, just a little bit.
And we know, so and just from listening to casting news on the Spider-Man movie, where they're casting everybody that's ever been in a Spider-Man movie for this movie, we know they're jumping across realities, right? I
Yep,
mean,
it's the
that
next
it,
all
it
reality.
makes it makes so much sense now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So it makes me I'm excited. I'm excited now because it almost feels like we figured it out, you know?
We
So
did. We've been talking about all this stuff, man.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do today is after I take a nap and sober up, is I'm going to rewatch both number 3 and number 4, and then I need to go back and watch Thor: The Dark World over again because there's a lot of stuff that might be coming into play to that, and maybe if I have time today, maybe that endgame stuff as well. But a
Wow.
lot of good stuff happening right now. I'm very happy with it.
All
Flame
right.
on.
Flame on. Hey, we've got flame on everything today. All
Yeah.
right. So thanks, guys, sticking with us. I know that we're way over time than we usually do, but I mean, I think it was enough stuff that we talked about, and that bringing us up to speed on King and Black needed to happen. And I didn't know that it was so in depth and so much detail, going back decades into Marvel Universe, which is continuity at its finest, which I complain about all the time. So Lucas, thank you for the education. I really hope that we can get traction on this particular episode because I think you you did a service to all Marvel fans today. So,
Just please don't buy all those books. Just leave some for me, guys. Please.
all right.
Don't.
So stay safe. We will see you again in a couple of weeks, and hopefully they can finish it off. You know, my big problem with they can never stick the landing. I hope they stick the landing on WandaVision. So.
Did
Well,
pretty good job so far.
we'll see. All right. Stay safe. We will see you in 2 weeks. Outro.